a look, and we're doing our third class. So
Yes.
I'll share. I think first, if we just head straight to section 18, uh, and yeah, we continue our reckless advance through the chapters, and then we'll try and pick up some of the Meno excerpt. But after we do this, please, yeah, if there's something from 17 or earlier, we'll go back over it. Okay, so new words. Agor, like all the other all verbs we've met, agor means, yeah, lead, can mean bring, but yeah, lead is good. Um, I think we saw last time anunc necessity, and this is the associated adjective, anunkaios, anunkaya, anunkaion. Um, and sometimes that's used, this is an adjective, first and second declension, so the feminine's first declension. Sometimes used as an adjective, like a necessary speech or something, but it's more normally used, you just have the neuter, anunkaion, and there either is or isn't an esti that you have to think. It is a necessary thing that accusative do infinitive. That's probably more usual. Anau, a preposition meaning without, takes the genitive. So yeah, prepositions that mean out of, away from, without, separate from, they take a genitive, which means yeah, genitive of separation. Argurion is silver. Sometimes, yeah, stands in for money because money was minted out of silver. The Athenians had a big silver mine. So can introduce a question. Yeah, it can also be a couple of other things. Ergar also introduces a question, but yeah, usually that's it. Like, is that like ergar full stop or question mark, and it means what? So
Uh-huh.
yeah, nigh, yes. So if someone asks a question and somebody says nigh, that means yes. If somebody says oo, that means no. So that's our basic answers to a question. Now this verb hupakor, I still find difficult to understand how to translate it. Partly because there are words for translating it. It's very difficult to make those words correspond to a Greek understanding of anything. Now he's got a paragraph on this below, and we'll look at that in a minute. We'll get down there, but it frequently it can be more or less well translated by saying present. Hupakor, I am present. But yeah, we'll see. Kairo, I rejoice. That's yeah, I'm glad. Uh, and kremata. So there's a word krema, which means a thing, usually an innate, inert thing, like a rock or a yeah, well, not a yeah, it could be a tree, but a tree is not inert. Um, and the plural of it, things, can be used for money or real estate. Yeah, but usually money. Kremata, when you normally see it in Attic prose, kremata means money. But crema in the singular is also quite frequent as just a general word for thing, and that means thing in a kind of third person sense, whereas pragma means thing as in a human affair, in the way that people now
Mm.
say, is that a thing? Like, is that a thing people do? You know, Sion is golden, and that's the article and the neuter adjective, which together makes a noun. So the gold thing. So it could be a gold coin or something. They're not introducing. He's not introduced the word for gold because that's got a difficult ending. Okay, so hupakor. He says has the root meaning I am in the beginning. So akor, I begin. Hup, yeah. It often means I exist or really am. So existence is a really modern. There's a Latin term that from which we get existence, but it's come from a constellation of meanings that's difficult to translate into Greek. But yeah, but sometimes you can translate it as to be. And then just jumping down to the second use with the dative, to belong to. So in both cases, it can have this sense of to be present and to be present to or belong to. But
Mm.
yeah, not easy. It's not an easy word to translate. So if we might look at the first sentence from the Republic. So ukun, phronimous, so that's accusative plural masculine, and that's describing people who are sensible or intelligent. Te, de huparkane, kai dunatus, kai eti ke demonas tes poleas. So main verb, de. It's necessary, both. So ukun, therefore, it's necessary, both that huparkane, you could say that they be sensible and capable. Dunatos means to have a certain power or capability. And so te kai, both sensible and capable. Kai eti, and furthermore, are people who care for, and that takes the genitive, care for the city from polis, poleios, and the genitive. So it means something like be, to be present as, but to be. The guardians must be intelligent, capable, and must also care for the city.
In what
Yeah, so
way
that's
does it, I'm just thinking about Amy, um, and is it Ani to be?
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it's this is, I guess, a different type of being.
yes. So yeah, being is a difficult term
Yes.
because it refers to everything and everything that can possibly be in any way whatsoever. So huparcane is narrower, and it means that's why it's being translated by things like exist, which
Mhm.
means to be in time and space, here and now, sort of thing.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
why to be present is sometimes helpful. So if I translate that as to be, it's necessary that the guardians be intelligent and capable and furthermore care for the city. Uh, then I'm using be in a restricted sense, like this is a particular requirement for these human beings. Um,
Mm.
but it's not something. The difference between huparcane and anai is not easy to bring into English, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one use. The second is with the dative, and that does mean something like belong to, be present to. So top bulesthai, agatha, parsin, hu parke. So top bulesthai is an articular infinitive, meaning article plus infinitive. Wanting good things. So when we want to use a nominal form of the verb, we usually make it um, we usually use a gerund like wanting good things, rather than to want good things. Um, but so we in English, you would say wanting good things. Hupake belongs to pasin, and that's a dative plural of uh, pas, pasapan, all or every. So it belongs to everyone.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know about is a property of, but belongs to, is present to everyone, belongs to everyone.
Mm.
So look at number two in this in the questions. Soy, so that's the dative from the second person personal pronoun, to or for you. Hupake ta ema kremata. So Crito has bribed the guard in Socrates' prison cell, come in and said, I can break you out of here, right? And ta ema kremata, my money, Ama is just the adjective related to the personal pronoun, to the personal adjective. My money, hupake, belongs to you.
Mm,
Yeah, is available to you.
mm.
Um, and this phrase, which does appear in the Republic, hair, hupakusa, so that's the participle, politeia. So you could translate that as the present regime. So politeia is the form that a polis takes. So with democracy, tyranny, oligarchy, aristocracy, etc. Um, so the present regime, the regime that obtains, yeah, okay. So that's enough on
Did you
Hupakor. It's not yet.
say, sorry, man, did you say
Yeah.
the former democracy takes?
No, the form, the word polis, which we not traditionally translate as city, but it
Yeah.
means the political community.
Okay. Yeah.
And
No,
the
I
and
thought.
the eidos for both Plato and Aristotle, the eidos of the polis, the form of the political community, is the politeia, the regime.
Yeah.
And that
Okay.
regime, yeah, traditionally takes six forms, depending on how many people rule and whether they rule for their own sake or for the good of the whole. So yeah, tyranny, uh, kingship, oligarchy, aristocracy, uh, yeah, what we would call people, the rule of the people, or a democracy that's a republic.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on whether or not they rule by law or by for their own good. He's actually got a use of this locution in this bit of a Gorgias. So air. So air, there's normally or. If there's two of them, it's either or, and we've got one coming up. So air, arcane, day. So that's going to be the main verb. It's necessary. Enter pole, air. So either or. Air, to runane, air, tes huparcuses politeias, hetairon anai. So either, so it's necessary either arcane to rule in the city, enter pole. So pole is the dative of polis. Or to be a tyrant, to rule as tyrant, um, or Anai to be Hetiron, a companion of the existing constitution, the present yeah, the present regime, whatever it is, democracy, a tyrant, yeah, the present regime, the existing regime. So that's yeah, Huparcor. It is difficult. The first two uses I'd try is be or be present to or belong to. It's the dative. Now we've looked at. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to get the mirror up just for a moment. So we started with the present tense, where you have the active, like luo, and you have middle passive, luomai. Future, active, luso, middle, lusamai, and we haven't seen the future passive. Aorist, we've got the active, elusa, the middle, lu, saman, and tonight we get the passive, lu, than. So it keeps the augment that the other past tenses do, the imperfect and the aorist take an augment and pluperfect. What's typical of the aorist passive is it has this theta in the stem. So eluthan is I was released. So the active elusa is I loosed or I released. The middle is I ransomed. And the passive I was loosed. So in each case, a past act described simply, not as an ongoing action, just to simply, it simply happened. I loosed, I ransomed, I was loosed. And because unlike the present, you have different middle passive endings, and tonight we're doing the aorist passive. Okay, I'll go back to the text. Yep. Okay. He discusses some of the background to the aorist, and there are like the active in the middle, there is a strong and a weak form. So the weak form in the active has the sigma, elu sa. The strong form has a change in stem and uses what look like imperfect endings. So, for example, elabon from lambano, elabon is I took. And he discusses here an example of a strong aorist, which we'll come to how these work. But so I just gave you an example of a weak aorist, the first aorist in the passive, eluthan, with that theta that's typical of the first aorist. Now there's a word that has a strong aorist form, magnumi, which means to mingle or mix. Okay? In the aorist passive, it has both a second aorist or a strong aorist, and you can see it here, emigan. So it's got the an ending like eluthan, but it doesn't have the theta. It's got a stem change, augment, the an ending of the aorist passive indicative, but it doesn't have that theta. I mingled, simple act described in the past. It also has a first aorist form, mik than, and it's mik than because the gamma, when it's put next to a theta, is aspirated because the theta is aspirated, so the palatal consonant before it is also aspirated, so it goes from a gamma to a chi. So mik than, I was mingled. So that's same. They have the same endings, the first aorist and the second aorist, but the first aorist or the weak aorist takes the theta in the stem. Okay. Now he's starting with the strong aorists, and there's a word which you might have seen, binor, I come or go. And as he says, I go, I step, because it does have that really basic sense of take a step. And in the perfect bebeka, it means something like to take a stand. Okay, so in the aorist, there are some, as he points out, some strong aorists were shortened or syncopated, and they're often called root aorists. You just have the root sound plus the endings. And for binaural, that's just the beta. So from binaural, I go in the present, I went is eben. So you've got the ending, the indicative ending for the passive, aorist passive, and the augment, and just the beta indicating the word. So the endings are, as you can see, eben, I went, ebes, you went, So there's a parallel. There is some parallel with the other endings, like for example, in the imperfect, elu on, elu s, elu e. It's just that we have an eta, not an epsilon. But so ebe, he, she went. Ebemen, we went. Eberte, you plural went. Ebersan, they went. So that's the endings are roughly in line, especially the uh, the plural endings, um, very similar to the active. Like elusan is the active; they loosed. Um, okay, so these are similar with the second aorist, and his example is from Magnumi. Mix is emigan. I I mixed, which is that's a second aorist form. It sounds like it's not passive. Um, it sounds like it has an active sense. Um, and Air fan has the passive sense. I was mixed. I mingled. I was mingled with. Uh, okay, so that's contrasting the second aorist with the first aorist, and now he indicates that the first aorist, is thought to have been later in the language, um, and he gives the example of Luo. So eluthen, eluthes, eluther, eluthemen, eluthete, eluthesan. I was loosed, you were loosed, and so on. So typical in the regular first aorist passive is theta, then en, es, em, and eta, esan. Another example. So legor, again, if you have the theta, because it's aspirated, it'll make the gamma aspirated, and the aspirated form of a gamma is key. So elekthen, I was said. Usually, I was said means I was spoken of. So I was said to be something. And mim nestor, I remind or I mention in the aorist passive m nes than. I was reminded. I was made mention of. Uh, okay, we can look at a couple of these questions. So Ara asking a question, eluthere. So it's from Luo. It's got the theta, and it's got the second person plural ending. So it's a question. So if it wasn't a question, it was just eluthere. It's you plural were loosed. So question: were you loosed? Um, how do you feel about reading one and having it go?
We can always try.
Yep, yep.
Uh, which one were you thinking?
Just number two. Number two.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Is Eleuther is who? Oh, I guess it has to be who was loosed.
Yes. Perfect. Who was loosed? Yeah. So interrogative pronoun who and third person singular in the aorist passive. Who was loosed? Perfect. Um, Margaret, how do you feel about reading number four? Sorry, you're on mute. Sorry.
Right. So, ti humor, humor, ti humor to sofo elechse. So it's a question.
Yeah.
Who? Yeah, I don't think I
So
will.
yeah. So
Yeah.
okay. So yeah. Look, you're right. It's a question, right? So we've got the interrogative pronoun t.
Mhm.
So the one Rob read was tis. So that's the masculine or the feminine. So that's going to be a person, usually. And the T is usually going to be a thing, right? So it'll be what. And then we've got hupo, tu sofu. So tu sofu, Margaret, do you recognize that at all? Tu sofu?
Yeah, it'll be like something like you, Sophie. Oh no, I'm sorry, I can't. Wise, but so
Yes,
yeah,
yes. No, and it's no, that's right. It's the adjective for wise is sophos, and here
yeah.
we have the adjective with the article, which usually turns it into a thing or a person.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so you wise beings or something.
So, and both of those two sofu, they
Yeah.
go with the hupo, the preposition, right? And hupo plus genitive, and this is something I didn't see mentioned, but I should have mentioned it myself, is that if you have a passive verb, then you're not telling who's doing the action, right? If you say, I was loosed, you haven't told us by who, right? If you said, wise things were said, you haven't said by whom they were said,
Mm.
right? So in this sentence, we've got elek there, which goes with the T. So the elek there is the third person singular of the aorist passive. So what was said? What was said? Now, so far we don't know who said it. As in English, you have to introduce a prepositional phrase like by so and so to tell us who said it. Yeah.
Right.
So hupot is plus the genitive is one of the ways of saying that. The other is just to use a dative, right? But it's normally hupot plus the genitive. So what was said by the wise one, the wise person? Yeah. So Margaret, does that make sense? Just looking at the page,
Oh
what
yes,
was said by the
yeah, I can see it in kind of retrospect, but not fully. But I couldn't do it myself. Well, yeah. Thank you very much.
yeah. Well,
I
no,
do.
well, we're just beginning with these forms, so there's no yeah, and there's no reason for you to be clairvoyant and
Mm,
anticipate.
yeah.
Um, so let's work through number 5. So Margaret, can I ask you to read number 5, and Rob will come back to you in a sec, just because it's a development of number 4, Margaret. So could you read that number
Okay.
5?
So tienes esan hutoi o hoi logoi hoi humo to sofo elechesan. Question.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good.
Yeah, tienes esan.
Okay, so it begins with this same interrogative pronoun. Who, and now this could be a masculine or feminine. So who or what, and in Greek we don't yet know if it is a who or a what. Yeah. So do you recognize son at all, Margaret?
No, I don't think so. I should. I don't think so. No.
So that's you know the verb to be Amy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah. So in the imperfect third person plural,
yep,
they were. It's
yeah.
son. That's son. So in the present, it's ason. They are. In the imperfect, it's son. So who were or what were, and then we get a nominative pronoun. So this is going to describe the subject. Who were hutoi, these, and so far we still don't know if it's people, men in this case, because it's hutoi, not hautai, or things. And then we get hutoi, hoi, logoi, which obviously agreeing with hutoi, they're all nominative, masculine, plural. So now we know that tines refers to logoi, so it's what. So what were these speeches? What were these speeches? Does that make sense, Margaret, from the
As far as so I've got as far as tines, Hisan, hoi toi, ohoi logoi. Yeah, I can get that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's as far as
Okay.
I can understand
Okay,
what you're
good.
saying. Yeah,
Okay. So then the next word is hoi with
yeah.
the accent. So what kind of word is that? that hoi with the accent.
It'll be a conjunction. Oh no?
It's
Oh,
actually, so
an
yeah, we just
article.
covered, yeah, no, we just covered this. So
Oh, sorry.
I don't expect it to be super familiar, but because it's not, but that's the relative pronoun who, what, or that. So it's the relative pronoun and it's referring back to logoi, the speeches which.
Oh,
Does that make
yeah.
sense? So
Yes,
the
yeah.
okay, so whenever you have a relative
Yeah.
pronoun,
Yep.
that's going to begin its own clause. So now we've got this relative clause from hoi to elek thesan at the end of the sentence, right? The speeches which hupo to sofu. What does hupo to sofu mean?
Well, we just had it in number 4, didn't we?
Yep.
Uh, with um, those philosophers or those wise people, those wise people. I'm sorry.
But no, you're right. You're right. Yeah, but just because it is so hupo, which means by, preposition meaning by, and introduces an agent. Right. So by the wise, and it doesn't say how many. Sorry, it does say how many. It's singular. It doesn't say person, human being, man, whatever. So which by the wise, and then we have the verb. That's the verb of the relative clause. Elek thesan. Okay, so we've only just seen this. So we've got at the very top of the page, Lego, I say, and in the aorist passive, elek than, I was said, I was said. Yep. So here we have elek thesan, and that's that ending, the airsan, is the third person plural ending for the aorist passive. So elek thesan is they were said. They were said. So this relative clause, hoi, hupot, tu, sofu, elek thesan, hoi, the speeches, hoi, which, elek thesan, were said, hupot, tu, sofu, by the wise one.
Yep. Okay. Thank you
Right.
very much. I've got that. I couldn't cope with it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
No, it's all new. I wasn't expecting you to sort it out. I just wanted to see if we could work it through together. Yeah, but is
Yeah.
that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you very much. It's a long
Okay.
sentence.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. It is for an entirely new verbal form.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's press on and then
Yep.
okay. Yeah, and this is actually just to as an aside, when you learn a verb and you learn the principal parts, the last principal part is the aorist passive because you just need to learn it for a particular verb. So like agor, agor, axor, ergegon, ercha, ergmai, ergthan is the last principal part. Because it's hard, like from agor here, agor, I lead, it's difficult to predict that the aorist passive is ergthan. It doesn't look a lot like it, right? If you're familiar with sound changes like palatal consonants when they're aspirated and so on, you might be able to figure it out, but it's not immediately visible. So that's why this is one of the major parts of the verb, a principal part of the verb. Yeah. So, and in this case, he's pointing out that the alpha in agor has an augment and it's lengthened to an eta, and then it's got the first aorist passive ending.
So just going back to principal parts, Martin, that means that once you know X, then you can then go through all the what do you call them? Conjunctions.
Yeah, or the aorist passive, and you have to
Yes,
know the
for that
aorist
one.
passive separately.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the first principal part, which is the present tense, first person singular, active, indicative, luor, I loose. From that, you can get to both the middle passive, luamai, and you can get to the imperfect, eluon, and all you have to do is know the endings and the augment. You don't have to. There's no stem change. But when it comes to the aorist passive, you have to know if it has the theta or not. For luor, so it's eluthan,
Mm.
and then you've got the aorist, and you can work out the aorist passives.
I wonder if,
Uh,
yeah, I was just picturing in my mind with the back in the day, like there's a whole lot of little Greek kids going through all these, what you
yeah,
just went through, because you just got to learn it.
I think they learned it from learning the. Yeah, they did. They learnt letters and words. I don't know if they did a lot of grammar, which Plato
Mm,
basically invented, uh, as opposed to writing out lots of poetry and memorizing it. So a well-educated student,
mm.
child, usually boys, but girls, some girls were taught, but not as many as boys, but knew a lot of Homer off by heart.
Right. And I guess
Yeah,
I guess the sounds and the changes were all part and parcel of the milieu that they're in. So yeah,
that's right, exactly right. Yeah,
totally different situation. Yeah.
yeah. It's actually like sometimes, reading a 19th century scholar who knows Greek and Latin and a bit of Sanskrit, and obviously has to be able to read French and German to do scholarship.
Yeah.
It's actually really very impressive because they've had to master all of these things, whereas
Yes.
even extremely capacious minds in ancient Greece did
Mm,
not. They just
yes.
Okay. So minor point. If the present tense of the verb is prefixed by a preposition, such as by, to, or from, the preposition comes before the augment. So
Mhm.
up agor it's got the preposition upo, away from, plus agor to lead. So up agor is I lead away, uh, especially to prison. So yeah, up agor, and in the aorist, up ek than. Similarly with the active, up egagon. The alpha changes to an eta to indicate the augment. The augment doesn't go at the beginning of a compound verb. It goes to the beginning of the simple verb. Yeah. So let's look at one example. Rob, can you read this first one for what
Which
is the
what
English for?
page? What?
This one,
Oh,
sorry,
oi.
it's sorry, where are we? Page 230. Yeah.
230. Okay.
Yeah, the what is the English for?
Yeah.
About 4 lines from the bottom. Yeah.
Okay. Hoi xenoi bia eis tan pollen ekthesan. Ekthesan.
Right. So Erch Thersan, that's the third person plural of Erch Than, just
I
above it.
lead. Yes.
Erch
So this
Than,
is, yeah. Uh, they were led.
they were led. Okay, so that's the main verb. That's the main verb.
Mhm.
All we have to do is figure out who's the subject, is there an object, and so on. So we've got hoi xenoi, and those look like, and in fact are nominative plurals, masculine nominative plurals,
Yes.
because the word's masculine. It's xenos, which means
Yes.
either a foreigner or someone who has this guest friend relationship. But here it looks like it's going to be foreigner rather than
Mhm.
guest friend. Hoi xenoi. So the foreigners,
Yep.
ek thesan, were led.
Were led.
Ace tan pollen. So ace plus
Ace.
accusative
Oh,
means into.
yep. Into the city.
And then we've
Right.
got this adverb bia by
Right.
force.
By force. Mm.
So the strangers were led into the city by force.
Mm.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so on the next page, 231, he's indicating that our problematic contract verbs, like we had poye or, der lo or, and maybe it wasn't tima or, it was another alpha contract verb. But what they do is, and this is fairly easy, they just lengthen that final vowel before the aorist passive ending. So der teo, like poyeo, like it's et poyethan and it's es der tethan. So here augment, then zdet zet, and then the lengthens to an eta, and then it's just regular aorist passive ending. So der tethan, I was sought. Now, der lo'o, which means to show, the omicron lengthens to an omega. So you add the augment, and then der law fan, I was shown. Okay, that's a nuance. Well, so the contract verbs are complicated in the present and the imperfect, but otherwise, well, once you know the principal part, et der law fan, it's easy. You just change the endings. I mean, I shouldn't say it's easy about anything that we're doing, but it's less complicated. Okay, so he says, note the following irregular aorist passives. So, yeah. And this is where, when you're trying to read some Greek, this is where it can be tricky. When you have a tense like the aorist that has an augment that changes the beginning of the word, and then sometimes the stem changes, and you're really stuck trying to find out what it is you should be looking for. And the first word here is an example. Like, so kaleo, that's the dictionary heading. I call, or I summon, or I name, right? But if you've got ek le than or ek le thesan or something, if you look up ek, you're not going to get it. If you think, well, maybe that's an augment, I'll look up kle, that you're not going to get it, right? So this is where the knowing the aorist passive form of a word becomes essential.
Or using Little and Scott online is really helpful.
Right. Yeah, but can you reverse?
That's the cheats version.
Yeah. No, yeah, as much cheating as possible. Yep. So, and then.
So what was that little online? L-I doubled the.
Yeah. So
right.
where do you read this? Liddell Scott Jones is like the major English language dictionary, updated last time 1993. So, and it was first published late 19th century. So it's not extremely advanced, but it's very comprehensive, and still used a lot. I still use it a lot. But I use it online at the Thesauri Linguae Graecae. I don't know where you find.
Yeah. I've accessed it through Perseus.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can be helpful because you click on a verb and they'll give you, it could be these three things.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes those stats are wildly out, but that is very helpful though, because they will get you from eclairthan to kaleo. So yes, that's helpful. Okay, so legor, which is I say, we've had error, I will say, error, I ask, error, I will say. So there's basically two roots to the most common words for saying. One is leg, and the other is re. And so the more common aorist passive is re than, as opposed to elek than. You still see elek than, but yeah, it's more common to see the one with the root of the row. So Sorsdor, I save, and the zdet has dropped out in the aorist passive. Sor than. Hora, or I see, is almost unrecognizable as orp then.
Mm.
Yeah, hora or is actually a little bit, well, it's quite irregular. So in the next principal part is the future. That's opsomai. It's got a middle with an active sense of I will see. And then the third principal part is a don, epsilon iota delta, omicron nu, a don, I saw. And then the aorist passive is orp than. So that is, yeah, it's quite an irregular word, which takes a while to
Mm.
click. Um,
So is that just a random question? Ophthalmologist then is something we're taking the verb from its passive.
Actually, the word for eye is ophthalmos,
Ah, okay.
but it's clearly got the same root,
Yes.
ophthan. The
Mm.
same root is there for something that was seen, and then the thing that you see with. Yeah,
Okay, yes.
yeah. Um, okay, so bluptor has a stem change from blup to blub ban and no theta, and final similarly fanan. Okay. Yeah, we probably should. I just want to see how much we have to get through in this chapter. So we're on page 233. Yeah, a bit. We should go on.
It's massive.
Okay, so participles, and the rule for which is you take off the augment like the aorists. So first aorist, lusa, I loosed. And in the participles, there's no augment, no it's just lusas, lusasa, lusan. In the aorist passive, similarly, the augment comes off. It's not elu, it's elu than. You lose the augment, and then you have the participial ending. So lu thes, lu thesa, lu then. Now these patterns are not ridiculously complicated because they're fairly regular first and third declension endings. So we'll look at the feminine first. So it's first declension. So lu thesa, and then in the accusative, you just add a nu, lu thesan, like arcare, arcan, lu theses. Actually, I should use Sophia. So Sophia, Sophian. Actually, no, what's a word that, yeah, like doxa, doxan, doxes, lu theses, and doxer with the added subscript, lu theser. So that's fair. That's regular for a first declension feminine word that ends in a consonant and then an alpha, like doxa. So that means you have the alpha in the nominative and the accusative, and then you have the eta for the genitive and the dative. And then in the plural, they're all the same, all feminine endings. So lu thesai, lu thesas, lu theson, lu thesais. So that's the first declension. Now the masculine and the neuter are in the third declension, which means they have this os ending and a stem change in the genitive. So it's just luthes, having been released, having been loosed. And then you get this, you go to the genitive, you get the stem change to ent, and then you just add the third declension endings to that. So luthes, luthent, thenta, thentos, thenti, thentes, thentas, thenton, and then the C ending, as you often for the dative plural in the masculine and the neuter, it makes the tau drop out, and you get luthesin. Yeah, and then the neuter, as always, is the same in the nominative and the accusative. So luthen, a thing that has been having been loosed, same in the nominative and the accusative. Then it follows the masculine. So luthentos, third declension, stem change, and os, e, and then for a neuter, always alpha in the plural, in the nominative and the accusative. Luthenta, things that have been loosed. Then follows the masculine, luthenton, luthesin. Okay, I've sprinted through that, but yeah,
Mm.
a bit of practice, and it's not wildly difficult. It's just because
Yeah,
it does
yeah,
follow a similar pattern.
Yeah. So just hold on. I've just got behind. I'm a bit phased, but it's all right. I'll be fine. I'm enjoying myself.
Okay, okay. Well, if you yeah, there's no
No,
point.
it's not your fault. I'm just going through
Yeah.
a stage. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
just got
yeah,
to
no,
pass through.
I was just going to say, there's no, yeah, we don't want to torture ourselves needlessly. So if it's a good idea to have a week where we just try and catch up on some things, just tell me, and we can do that. Yeah, because our only timetable is, where we're actually learning, as opposed to, um, yeah, torturing ourselves needlessly.
No, well, I'm not torturing, but I haven't done enough work this week for all sorts of reasons. And so, but I am also a bit phasey. So yeah, I'm not really a good example. I'm happy to just hurl on and hope
Okay,
that,
okay,
as long as Robbie's and,
yeah.
yeah, and, and hope that this week will turn out better for me. Yeah.
okay, okay.
It's only a matter of repeating the course again.
Right, right.
If I don't
Yeah,
get it, yeah.
we definitely will be. So,
Yeah, I really like
uh,
it. I really like it. When I get into it, I really, really, really like the experience. I'm sitting here happily by myself,
okay.
studying. And it's good. Yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah,
I think it is a beautiful language to study. I find it,
that's right. It's surprising.
more enjoyable than other languages, even though it's harder. Like it's
Well,
harder
it's even got
than
an
German,
indigenous. It's
French.
quite indigenous feel in lots of ways. Somehow,
Hmm.
it's more primitive. Or do you say primal? I'm not sure what I'd say. It's very civil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, and very in the hands of someone like a a Plato, like infinitely delicate and uh, elegant. Yeah.
Yeah. You get more of that than I do, but yeah, I like the thinking that's put before me when I do get when I do get it worked out. I really like the feel of the thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's something in the expression of the ancient Greeks in the material we have, which is all excellent. Like apart from a few speech writers who are talking about how they beat up their neighbor and it's his fault that he got killed and so on. Apart from that, yeah, most of it is on a very high level.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, so we're up to the infinitive. So it's the passive infinitive. So it's to be such and such. So for luor, I loose, the aorist passive infinitive has the theta because it's the first error. So some of them won't have the theta, and then the ending ernai. So luthernai, to be loosed. So it's an infinitive. So it doesn't tell you person and number. It just describes the action by itself, to be loosed. Now you've got a couple of examples here, which we may as well practice pronouncing and guessing at. Rob, do you want to try the first?
Yeah. Praxenai, and I'm guessing that's to be done. To be done.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's from Pator. That's good. Or Prusor. Yeah, to be done. Uh, Margaret, do you want to
Yeah.
read?
So I might be to rule or something. Was it- I,
Actually, yeah, no, it's very, very close to that, but it's from Agor. So to be led or led away,
all right.
yeah,
Yeah.
carried off. Yeah. Um, uh,
Clear.
yeah, should we go on? Yeah, just go on to 3 and 4. What do you want to do?
Okay. Clairthenai. That's that Keleor one, isn't it? Which
That's right.
I have to go and look that up somewhere.
So yeah, kaleo is to call. So
Oh,
Claire,
okay.
Thenai,
Uh, to have called. Oh,
to.
to be
That's right. That's
called.
right. To be called, and normally it would be to be called such and such. something is,
Oh,
yeah,
yes. Mhm.
something must be called such and such or something like that.
I'm guessing the next one, something about carried, to be carried, is it all? No? To
So
guess.
before we have two roots for the word say. So one is leg and the other is re. And this is the
Oh,
ret one. So re thenai is to be said.
mhm. I'm not up to that. Right. Okay. Thanks. Rest then I.
Yeah, this is where, after a while, it's important to start learning principal parts. But we're just looking at this principal part for the first time today, so it'll take a while. But if you, that
I'm
sheet I
also
gave
not.
you,
I'm not taking in tonight. Not to see it back out. My mind is somewhere else. Partly. That's the trouble. Don't take any notice of me tonight.
well, yeah, but pull me up if we're going too fast because we are skipping quickly.
It's all right. It's all right. Truly.
Okay, so after the infinitive, he's got the imperative, aorist imperative passive. Now, these aren't that, you don't see these as much as you do the active imperatives, because normally you're saying, you do this. You're not saying, have this done to you, right? Because the passive is be something, as in luo, to release, to loose. You look at the second person singular here, it's lutheti, you singular, be released. So normally you're telling someone to do something actively, or in the middle, like to ransom, right? So yeah, but these exist and they are sometimes used. So lutherti, you singular, be loosed. Luthertor, this is actually sometimes used. Let him, her, it be loosed, because you're addressing someone and saying, let this third party be released. Then in the plural, the regular te ending after the theta and eta. So lutherter, you plural be loosed. And then luthenton, let these people be loosed. I'm going to keep skipping because the imperative is not that common. So then the subjunctive. Now, the subjunctive endings are exactly the same as the present tense endings. So in the present tense, it's lu or, lu es, lu er, etc. Same here, except that in the first aorist ones, they have the theta in the stem. So lu thor, and the other difference is the accent. So in uh, the present tense, the accent recedes back to the last vowel before the ending. So lu or lu s. Whereas here it's over the ending. You can see there's a circumflex over each subjunctive ending. So lu thor. What would be the context? That would be, if it's first person, it would be ought I to be loosed, or I would be loosed. Like I want to be loosed. Luthes would normally be a negative prohibition. So mer luthes. So don't you be loosed. Luther, similar. Let him not be loosed. Luthorman would be Luthorman, question mark, ought we to be loosed? Or Luthorman, no question mark, let us be loosed. Lutherter would normally have a mare, like don't you, plural, be loosed. And Luthorsi, mare, let them not be loosed. As he says, like the subjunctives are normally used with a subordinating a conjunction for purpose or time or some other thing. So here he's pointing out that a passive prohibition can be used mere plus the aorist passive subjunctive, and it will normally, he's got second person singular, claire thes, from kaleo to call. the second person singular kleirthes, which is you were called. You were called. Me kakos kleirthes. So me plus kleirthes means don't you be called kakos, bad. So me kakos kleirthes, don't be called bad. And as I was, saying, if you have a subjunctive, it'll in the second person, it's normally a prohibition, and you have me plus a subjunctive. And so the subjunctive for kai ro, to rejoice or be glad, me kare te, don't rejoice. And kai ro, to be glad at or rejoice in, takes the dative. So don't rejoice in kakos, bad things. Me kakos kare te, don't rejoice in bad things. Yeah. Yeah, is that?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the second person. In the subjunctive, you're normally going to have a prohibition with me. Just want to see how much. Okay, now the optative, just to pile up the endings. Yeah, so the octave ending is like the optative for Amy, the verb to be an, as, ayer, ayamen, ayerte, ayersan. In the plural, just to make things more confusing, there's a long version, amen, lutheamen. But it could be luthamen, where the a and the erta have contracted. And you can see that the contraction is indicated by the circumflex. So luthamen. Again, the iota is the sign of the optative ending. Okay, skipping wildly ahead. Okay, so then that brings us to the Mino, and looking at the Mino, I think we're back at, are we in section 15 or 16?
Yeah, 16 today we're supposed to do.
Okay.
We did 15.
Right, and did we start 16 at all, or are we still?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
We just
No,
kind
that's
of
fine.
finished. We just finished 15, I think.
Okay.
How's that, Rob? Are you fine?
Yeah, I'm believing you, Margaret.
All right. No, I did organize my papers. I got a bit lost today. When I was paper shuffling, I eventually worked it out.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Okay, so if we start at the beginning of,
back to section, so
yeah,
16. Yeah,
so page 213.
right.
Okay.
So, oh yeah, I'll read and discuss a bit, and then I'll ask you to read a sentence each, and we'll go on. Yeah. So Socrates says, "Lege gar moi." So gar connects to the previous sentences and says, "I said that because lege moi." Lege, second person singular imperative in the present tense. Is that recognizable? Lege, it gives an order, second person singular imperative. So, and moi, indirect object. So tell me, and if there was, like tell me the reason would be the accusative, direct object of lege, and moi, that's the indirect object. Tell to me this, right? But there isn't, it's just implied. Tell me this, tell me. Tele tan kales t. So we just had that word, so kaleo, which means to call something. It can also be like in English, we can call something, or we can summon someone, and it's the same thing, to call for someone, And he says, kales, and it's a question. Do you call T something? Teleutan. So a teleutan is an end or a limit. So teleuter is an end or a limit. It's associated with the word telos, which is a normal word for end, from which we get teleology, which is a logos of ends. So do you call something a limit or an end? Toyonde legor, hoyon. So toyonde and hoyon are correlatives. Toyonda is the demonstrative version, and hoyon is the relative version. And the oi usually means a pronoun that has the meaning of this sort. So he's saying toyonde lego, I mean this sort of thing, hoyon of the following sort, this sort of such a sort as, or I mean this sort of thing, for example. So hoyon is often translated as for example, because it literally means of such a sort as, or as follows. So it's usually translated for example. I mean this sort of thing, such as peras kai esketu. Sorry, kai esketon, both accusatives. So, and all these words do all mean the same. So to peras, it's a third declension word, and it's a neuter, and and we have it in the accusative, and eschaton is also in the nominative accusative, and they both mean a limit. So you could say peras is the limit and eschaton is the extreme, the limit or the extreme.
So yeah,
Like the extreme limit.
yeah. Well,
Oh yeah, but
the
he's saying
limit, yeah, the limit inferior or the limit in superior, it occurs in mathematics in analysis. The limit superior and the limit inferior.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking of eschatology and
Exactly. So that, I mean,
the end
it has
times.
it. Yeah. So that puts the end in time and space, whereas, yeah.
Oh, right, that's a good
But that,
thing. Yeah. Yep.
that's the end of all things, right? That's the end of all
Yeah.
things. Whereas, yeah, this is a much more prosaic. So
Okay.
teleuter, peras, and eschaton, they all mean the limit. Yeah, but in different senses.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. That's where we get eschatology. In the same way we get teleology from telos and logos.
Right.
Okay, so then after the dash, he says panta, tauta, tauton, ti, lego. So panta, tauta, all these things.
Things.
In regard to all these things, I say lego, tauton, ti, something the same. So I'm saying, yeah, I'm saying there is something the same in respect of all these things. Then the colon, and then Esos done, hemin prodikos diapheroito. Okay, so Esos is an adverb, as you can tell from the horse or os ending. And it comes from the adjective esos, equal. So the adverb is equally, or yeah, and it usually means something like perhaps. But perhaps, and then we have a potential optative from this verb, diaphero, third person singular optative. Yeah. And diaphero is to distinguish, and diapheromai can mean, if you look down at, there's a note 19, he says in English, differ can also have the meaning of quarrel with or differ from. And that's true for diapherol. Okay, so perhaps, so we've got an plus diapheroito, an plus an optative, perhaps prodikos, and that's a name that's in the nominative, so it's the subject of diapheroito. Perhaps prodikos would differ, her mean, with us. Yeah, perhaps he would disagree. Perhaps prodikos would differ with us. Alla suge, pu kales pep paranthai ti, kai te teleu te kenai. Allah, so Allah's a strong conjunction, disjunctive conjunction, but you, ge, you indeed, you at least, um, you call, and then there's a T, you call something pet paranthai. Now, pet paranthai is the aorist passive infinitive of perainor, to come to a limit, right? So you call something to be brought to a limit. Kai tet tele you te kanai. And to have come to an end. So if we use end for words with telos and limit with words that have peras or perainor, then we say, do you call something to be brought to a limit and to be brought to an end? Then he goes on, to toyuton bulamai legain, uden poikalon. Okay, so I wish bulamai legain, so it takes the infinitive to complete its meaning. I wish to say, direct object, toyuton, this sort of thing. What he's just said. I want to say something like this. Uden poikalon. Poikalos can mean something like intricate. When it discusses colors, it means dappled. Lots of different colors, and it has the metaphorical sense of complicated. So I don't mean, I mean something like this, nothing complicated. How's that? Is there anything to ask about? Anything to go? Yeah.
Yeah, nothing complicated.
No, nothing poikalos in that at all.
Right.
Martin, this Anne, Alpha Nu, it pops up a lot, and I keep forgetting. I've forgotten how it functions, because it's a funny little particle, isn't it?
Yeah. So the un is untranslatable.
Mm.
You can regard it as an adverb, but it's usually called like a modal particle, which means it tells you it's going with, usually with an optative or a subjunctive.
Okay.
Now we have an optative here, dia feroito, which could mean, it's got two possible meanings as a main word in the sentence, as it is here.
Mm-hmm.
Without an un, it's a wish. So I wish he would differ, right? So the optative has two independent uses, wish, and then if we add the un, it becomes what's called a potential optative. So could or would. So with the un, dia feroito on, it means he might differ, he could differ, he would differ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, two main uses for the, yeah, I can just
So sorry,
summarize
with
this.
the it's might differ, and
With
without,
the un, it's, yeah, might or could.
yeah,
It's called a potential octave. So you
yeah,
normally translate that could differ.
yeah.
He would, or could or would. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Without the un, it's a wish. And sometimes the wish has agar or ather with it. And so it means I wish that, whatever. In the older translations, they say things like, would that he would differ, or something.
Right. Yes.
So that's the optative. I'll just quickly do the subjunctive. So if it's in the first person, it's usually an exaltation. And it's usually in the plural. So first person, usually plural. For example, legormen, let us speak, like we ought to speak. Or it could be again, first person, and again, usually plural, not always. it can be a deliberation, which is the same construction with a question mark. So if we had legomen, question mark, which is a colon, that would be legomen, ought we to speak?
Mm.
Ought we to speak? And then the third use for the subjunctive, when it's the main verb in a clause, is usually second person, and it's a prohibition, which we saw before. Prohibition, and it's mer plus the second person. So say mer legerte. You, plural, don't speak. Don't speak.
Mm.
So those are the main uses of the optative and the subjunctive, and they have other uses in a subordinate clause after a subordinating conjunction. But those are the main uses of it. This is why it's so hard to provide a proper translation of the subjunctive, because you don't really get the third person subjunctive by itself as any of these. You normally get it after in a subordinate clause.
Yep.
Now, if we do one more line, it's 8 o'clock. If we do one more line,
Yep.
then we're on to the next page. So, Allah kalor kai oi mai manthanein ho leges. So Allah is, any help with Allah?
But yeah,
But very Allah kalor, which is
But good.
Allah. Oh, that's like kalos, or so
Oh,
this is that verb kaleo, but it's
kaleo.
yeah, but it's a contract verb, and so the epsilon and the omega have contracted. So kalor. So
Okay.
he's saying, but I do call, and you have to read the rest in. I call something an end in the various ways you've said. I do say that there's such a thing as an end. But I do call something an end. All right, and then he goes on, kai oimai. So oimai is
Mm. Oh, that's that thing we did last week, but I can't remember what it is.
so it's
Oh,
got what
is this
looks like.
this is one of those clauses, the uh, that type of clause. So right,
Actually, not this one, but
not this one.
yeah. So okay, so we've got kai, which is just and then oimai is one of the words for like saying. Sorry, thinking or supposing. Right, it's got the first person singular ending, so it looks like a middle passive ending, but it's got this active sense of think or suppose. It's quite frequent in Plato as in opposition to epistemi, having knowledge, oimai, I suppose, I think, I suggest. So, and that's the main verb of this clause after kai. So we've got the first clause, but I do call such things ends, and I suppose, and then after this verb of saying or thinking, in this case thinking, we have an accusative and infinitive. Well, we have indirect discourse, which is normally accusative infinitive. He says, I suppose that I understand. Now, when you have the same person is the subject of the main verb, oimai, and of the infinitive, manthanein, if there was a pronoun there, it would be in the nominative. Normally, you're saying, I suppose that they are learning. It will be autus manthanein. But I suppose that I understand. I suppose that I myself, autos manthanein, that I myself understand. But you don't have to have that there. It's just implied. So kai oimai manthanein. But I suppose that reported speech, reported thought. I suppose that I understand. And then we have ho, which is the neuter of the relative pronoun, which or that. And so it has a small relative clause, ho leges. I understand what you are saying.
Mhm.
Now, the relative clause always refers back to a noun or equivalent, and here it's missing. So it'd be something like, I understand this thing which you were saying. And it's very, very helpful sometimes to try and think of what the relative is referring back to. It's called the antecedent, because the relative pronoun gets its gender and number from the antecedent and its case from its own, its role in its own clause, and its role here is to be the direct object of legase. So that ho would be accusative. I understand what you are saying. And that means we have
Right.
triumphantly completed page 213, and we can march on to 214 next time.
Right.
Yeah, so if you can have a look at, yeah, work your way through as much of 18 as possible. And yeah, we can continue next week, or yeah, email if you think you really want to slow things down and we can do more exercises together. I don't think that would be a terrible thing. But I also think that we're going to have to live with a little bit of
Yep.
incompletion and discomfort at this point. But yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, any questions that I can discuss before we hop off? Or anything?
No, sounds good, Martin.
Yeah, sounds good to me too. Have a lovely week, both of you. Thanks very much.
You too.
Yeah, you
Terrific.
too.
Yeah.
Well
Thanks
done.
Okay.
Well
very
done.
much. Yeah.
See ya.
Okay.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.